Good morning, Paula. How are you?
Good morning. Well, I'm feeling pretty good after hearing your intro music. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a
It
fun thing
might
in the morning.
it helps you wake up there at 7 a.m.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for making the time. And I know you and I have met within a group that is basically coaching for online visibility and all aspects of business.
Hmm.
And we thought that we would go live together to expose our audiences to what it is that we do. I am located here in San Antonio, Texas. Where are you, Paula?
I am in Seattle, so I
Okay.
appreciate that it's still a little bit light out because the season is turning. So
Yeah, yeah. Do
yeah.
you like living there?
Yeah, it's super beautiful. It is green most of the time, except in the summer when it gets a little dry. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. Mountains, water, great city.
Right. Would you say it's a cosmopolitan city?
I think so. Yeah, it's pretty international. There are people from all over the world that come to work here. Obviously, we have some pretty big heavy hitters, especially in the tech world, like
Mhm.
Amazon and Microsoft, but we also have Starbucks. So we have, and a multitude of others, Boeing. So there, it's a great hub for business and tech. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
great place.
Awesome. Well, for our audience, if at any point you want to participate in the conversation, we do have the comments section connected to this tool. So please feel free to ask questions to Paula or myself, and then we can have an interactive conversation if possible. Let's get started maybe with letting people know what you do, and then I'll also maybe talk about what I do because I realize that I'm exposed to your audience as well. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Paula Rosecky. I have been in the market research world for a couple decades, and I have expanded to also include facilitation skills. And there's a little bit of a difference because the purpose of why you're holding a group conversation is a little different in facilitation than it is in market research. And I'm also a certified life coach, and I'm kind of bringing all of those things together in some of my current offerings. And I particularly am really loving one-on-one coaching right now. So those are some of the things that I'm doing.
yeah, that sounds like a lot of good skills come together there. I have a similar situation where I have lots of different skills also from my background in law enforcement. Before my immigration to the United States, I used to work as a law enforcement officer in Luxembourg, Europe. And even within that realm, I had lots of different tasks. I started off as a street cop in a red light district, and then I started fighting human trafficking and drug cartels. And then in the second part of my career, I focused on investigating international financial fraud. So all of those skills translated nicely into business ownership. And so what I do today is I own a healthcare marketing agency, and I have a specialty niche that serves physicians and companies that operate within the free market medicine aspect, which means a lot of healthcare delivery that happens without traditional healthcare insurance, often cash pay or even membership based. And we can really help with anything from websites to IT videos, blogging, I had website, yeah, social, you name it. I have also recently ventured into coaching because I have noticed that whenever people are actively participating in their online visibility, especially medical professionals, that is giving better results because it humanizes the brand. So that's what I do.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's so cool. I would love, oh my gosh, I would have so many questions about your time in international fraud and your
yeah.
experience in policing. I mean, oh my gosh, how cool. How cool. So I'm going to turn it around real quick just because
Okay.
I want to know, how did you move from there to doing, online marketing, helping online marketers for their medical businesses?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the gist of it is that I was always good with computers and numbers and had a very strong logical side to what I was doing. And I thought, well, is there going to be a way where I can kind of push the intellectual boundaries? And I combined that with my American dream. I had always wanted to there we go. I had always wanted to come to the United States. So when after my career in law enforcement, when I decided to come and I won the green card, I studied interactive media studies, which was a basically a double major in computer science and marketing stuff. And I worked as an employee as a software developer for about a year and then started freelancing. And people always tell you you gotta find your niche, you gotta find your specialization. And for me, the niche found me in a way because I was
Hmm.
working at a rehab facility, working on their website actually, when they asked me, "Hey, do you think you can help us with the video too? We need to interview an employee of ours that used to be an addict and now is a person in recovery that is doing great here." And because in my previous career I had so much exposure to people who suffered from the ailment of addiction, I just had I guess, a better perspective and way of conversing with that person than a typical marketer would have had. And it dawned on me, there's something there with your soft skills that you can use, that goes into the realm of healthcare and wellness, and use those soft skills to create good conversation. And
Hmm.
very much so it happened that, and you might know that in life, when you start focusing on something and you start going to networking events and you say, I am X for this industry, for healthcare and wellness, then you start attracting clients, and a network like that.
Yeah.
And what really mattered to me as well was finding a way where I could give back to the nation that welcomed me in such a friendly way. And what better thing to do than contribute to the wellness and healthcare?
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. So it's very purposeful for you to go into this area. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm typically not someone in life who does things without purpose. That's not my
Mm.
my style.
We're two birds of a feather then. Yeah. I like intentionality is important, especially as we, gain our experiences and realize, what we enjoy doing and where we think we can add value. And
Hmm.
that's very similar to where I am as well, is taking all of my skills in interviewing and having intentional conversations with a very purposeful end to the conversation of what you're trying to accomplish in it. And just helping people understand like what their goal is for getting together, whether it is a focus group or it's a facilitated session with a group of stakeholders or leaders. And even in one-on-one conversations, in a one-on-one coaching relationship, as you probably know, is
Hmm.
you're trying to come up with a result for somebody, and what are some of the obstacles and strategies to help someone get there, especially if there's a lot of kind of mindset things that they need to
Hmm.
uncover and then kind of put aside to help them grow and move forward.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And Well, that makes me curious. Where you what are your roots and
Mm.
origins? Where do you come from?
Yeah, well, so I always say I'm the daughter of immigrants. My
Mm.
family came here. My parents came here in 19 into the US in 1969. And so I grew up with them, not speaking English. They were highly qualified in their areas of expertise, particularly in chemistry, actually.
Mm.
And it took them quite a while to get their feet on the ground and in jobs where they were qualified for. And so I was kind of that kid that would actually helped them learn English, even though
Mm.
strangely English is not my first language, which I didn't realize until recently. Like, oh yeah,
That's interesting.
if my parents weren't speaking English, then clearly English was not my first language. So that's been a very interesting little mind shift for me. But in
What
any
is
case,
your first language, though? What is it?
well, then it's Czech. It
Oh,
is Czech.
Czech. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't really think of it that way because the minute I started going to school, right, I was immediately immersed, and then my parents, they were of the era where they were not necessarily encouraging me or asking that I have to speak Czech because they
Mhm.
didn't really necessarily see a reason for it or a purpose at the time.
Mhm.
Later, however, I'm fast forward now. I decided to go and live in now the Czech Republic. And ended up, what I thought was going to be 3 months of living abroad ended up being 8 years. And so I of
Okay.
course learned to speak the language. I ended up actually being an interpreter,
Okay.
strangely. And I had a series of jobs that were fantastic. I used to work for the Kmart Corporation, had bought all of these department stores that were owned by the government. And I was working for Kmart, helping them in their buying office and was helping with interpretation and supervising some office things. So that was my entree into sort of the world of work outside of the US, and I loved it. I loved it so much that I stayed for 8 years.
Yeah, that's quite some time.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you were very well received and treated over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was I mean, given that I was of Czech background
Mhm.
and people were pretty open at the time to English speakers in
Mm.
particular, because people did not speak a lot of English there in the, late 80s, early 90s. So, they were very forgiving of me and my Czech as I sort of ramped up and then
Yeah.
became fluent eventually. So, yeah.
What made you come back?
Oh, we might have to go really deep here, Shankar. I think it was a combination of things. I had been there long enough, and I was worried that if I was away from the US for too long, that I wouldn't be employable and I would never get a job
Mm.
in the US. So that started kind of bothering me. And then honestly, I started feeling guilty for leaving the country that my parents very purposefully came to.
Mhm.
And now I left and went back to their home country, and it started kind of weighing on me. They weren't putting a lot of pressure on me, but I think they were like, "Wait a minute, now you're gonna go live over there?"
Yeah, I can
Start a
see that.
family, and so I think it didn't compute for them, and it could have computed for me, but it didn't. I came back to the US, and strangely, my troubles began a little bit because I uh, I got really, really depressed. I just didn't kind of
When you came
understand.
back.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
I suffered from reverse culture shock. I didn't know that that's what it was. It just felt like depression.
Mhm.
And so I tried to get some help, and I that didn't seem to quite work for me. And then I realized way later, once I was introduced to coaching, that actually, I think, would have, had I understood what it was and how it may have helped, I think I actually could have benefited from a coach at the time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so I had that was a big transition. Strangely, it seemed almost that coming back to the US was a bigger
A bigger
transition than
one,
it
yeah.
was going there. So, because going there, it was all exciting and new and interesting,
Yeah.
right? And then coming back, I was like, wait a minute, how come there are so many options in the grocery store? It was like overwhelming. It was very overwhelming at the time, you know? Yeah. But that's kind of what led me to really being open to other people and cultures, and when I got back to the U.S., I did get a corporate job at for marketing insights area, and I wasn't interested in what they called the general market. That sounded like just not, it wasn't my cup of tea. I ended up going doing a lot of multicultural research work,
Hmm.
and I really enjoyed that a lot. I worked on Spanish speaking advertising, and eventually did a lot of in-home ethnography work, which is basically just going into people's homes and understanding their beliefs, opinions, perceptions, and feelings around different products and services. So I got to really get, it was kind of a Wizard of Oz sort of, job where I got to really see what people do in their homes and in their lives. And
Interesting.
I really love understanding how humans work, you know.
Would you be able to share like one or two insights from that work that may be surprising or just really insightful?
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite things actually is I did live in Texas for a number of years. My company moved me there
Okay.
because I was considered a multicultural guru of sorts for the company, and and they wanted to better understand the local market and some of the trends there, and so a lot of it had to do with Hispanic marketing. And the thing that I just really stands out to me was doing cross border studies, which you
Mm.
probably understand the dynamics between the Texas border and Mexico, and just how people, what we were studying at part of what I was studying at the time was how people looked at the different beer brands when they're in Mexico and kind of coming over the border or coming over to immigrate, and just what people carry with them in terms of their perceptions of
Mhm.
attitudes and brands is really, really interesting. It's cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like some really, in a way, nerdy stuff that
I know.
marketers marketers would love to hear
I know.
more
Look at me. I was like, oh, I was so excited about it. I can nerd out about that stuff for sure.
about. Well, so you chose the title of our speech to be
Mm.
Inclusivity in Small Business. So tell me more about that. I am pretty sure it has a lot to do with what you do and what are kind of the obstacles you see and how can you help with that. And also, if you have any questions for me as a small business owners,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious what, when you say that, when we say that inclusivity in small business, like what comes up for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I will say that for example, when I had my capstone project at Miami University, we had to run a company, a marketing agency that had real clients, and I was appointed to be the CEO, and the workers were students in the class, and I pretty much ran that company the way I used to run a police squad. It was pretty much
Mhm.
this is how I think we should go, and let's go. And after a few weeks, after the students had given feedback about me, my professor had me read the book, how to make friends or something like that.
And how yeah,
Uh,
make friends and influence
right,
people.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a big one.
So that was kind of one of the first experiences for me where I think inclusivity meant, well, not I think, I knew inclusivity also meant letting different work styles and different ways of solving a problem influence what you do. And as a
Mhm,
leader, letting that be part of decision making.
mhm,
Even if you are the owner and the CEO, it is other people who have to do the work, and it really has a lot of value listening to their ideas and to how they want to do it, because at the end of the day, if they're the ones doing the job, then you might as well let them do the job the way they want to do it, if it lends to more productivity and efficiency. So that was certainly one of the first big lessons there. And yeah, let's see. Also, the concept of asking an opinion about almost anything in the business that I would typically, again, coming from a law enforcement world, you were not asked opinions, because that was actually dangerous. Sometimes,
mhm,
for example, when we would have to deal with riots, you can there has to be one commander who says, okay, this is how we're going to disperse this crowd. And if you took the time to talk about it over and over and over again, that would probably have been dangerous. But in business, especially in creative business, it's apparently very productive to talk something about something multiple times. And that is something that I had to learn too. This,
mhm.
inclusivity of thought and also of methodology,
Yeah,
which, it might surprise you that that's what comes to my mind first when I hear inclusivity. I think a lot of people think more about different ethnicities and backgrounds and languages, which that of course is a big part of it as well. But for me, that was what came to my mind first. And then fast forward, of course, um, working with a very diverse team here in San Antonio. My team is diverse, and my second in command, my COO, is a Black woman, and people who live in San Antonio are by nature very diverse. A lot of Hispanics, as you know, and
mhm,
I just we have international team members living in Canada, living in Venezuela, and it's just, I guess I really don't have a problem opening myself up to talent wherever it may be. Um, and naturally that just has led to what I believe or what I perceive as a very inclusive environment.
yeah,
One of the soft skills that transferred over from being a law enforcement officer is what a lot of people actually are often quite surprised about, is this willingness, almost this necessity by law, to listen to all the different sides of the coin, right? Listen to every perspective to understand the background of why a certain crime happened. Sometimes a crime is absolutely not justifiable, but it may still be important for the judge to know how did it get to that point. So
mhm,
a lot of, if you do your job right as a law enforcement officer, there's a lot of um, chosen empathy that is part of the skill set that you need to have. And that has served me very well in leading a team, but also in maintaining relationships with clients, because it is a lot about walking in their shoes, seeing things from their perspective. It often frustrates. Like, working with clients is often causing frustration. It's just how it is. But it helps a
Because they're
lot.
human. Humans can be great and they can be a little frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, but it helps a lot when you constantly are hardwired to analyze every possible perspective, and that's something that, again, my time as a law enforcement officer gave me as a very valuable gift. So that's
Yeah.
what comes to mind, really.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, there are many aspects. I mean, right now there's a lot of people talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and
Mhm,
belonging. And what you touched on is, diversity is it's the numbers basically, like how many people do you have of different backgrounds that are in your company? Inclusion, the reason I like to talk about, I mean, of course, it's all related and important. I like to talk about inclusion because it's something that we do. It's an action. I kind of look at the world in
mhm,
terms of 5 different ways, and that is like there's a fact, there's something that just happened, it's something that we all agree upon. So I could look at your numbers of, ethnic backgrounds in your company, and that is a number, it's a fact, right?
mhm,
But then we interpret it in some way. There's a belief or an opinion, a perception about that that creates a feeling, and then that feeling drives an action. So I like to talk about inclusivity because as a society, we're trying to bring more people in. And as a business, like you said, there are so many great reasons to have a more inclusive and diverse audience. So it's your audience, like who you're actually serving, but it's also the people in your company where you get diversity of thought, right? Like you said,
mhm,
it helps decision making because someone might have an opinion about something or an idea that never would have occurred to you because your background is different. We're all coming
mhm,
from, different places. So uncovering those ideas and having structured ways of doing that, I kind of put that into inclusivity too. It's also, how are we approaching meetings? What is it that how are we trying to accomplish or like gather these ideas?
mhm.
So inclusivity can come in your policies, it can come in your practices, and just your kind of behaviors in general. So there are many aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to admit, I never consciously thought about a methodology of applying it, but I mean, I see the value of that for sure. And I can also tell that there's probably certain companies that have a greater need than others. I mean, it definitely
Yeah.
depends a lot on a person's. I mean, if you are already an immigrant to a nation, it helps probably because you have seen the different perspective, a different perspective, right?
Yeah, and actually,
Yeah.
this is what made me lean into this a little bit more because I've recently been coaching many people of an immigrant experience,
Hmm.
and so I come from it in that from that aspect, right? There's
Yeah.
all kinds of biases around. So there's like a linguistic bias, right? If someone can't speak the language perfectly, there's probably going to be some bias around that. And there's all kinds of other unconscious biases that we walk around with, and we don't realize it until we start paying a little bit more attention. And so a lot of it is just exercises in raising your awareness that, about how you're thinking about people or how people behave or how people are, um, and helping them understand that all of it is valuable.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And do you have do you have companies that come to you and ask you for like a plan of action for that, or do you offer that?
Yeah, so there is a structure that I have that I think works very well, and it's very inclusive, as you might imagine.
I would hope so.
And it involves working with the leader or a handful of leaders in the company. So first of all, actually, let me back up and just define small business for a moment, because
Yeah,
there's many people look at it in many ways. So if you
absolutely.
look at how, I mean, technically, like, I'm a small business, but obviously I can look at my own practices
Mm,
and evaluate how inclusive they are, or have someone else help me evaluate that. But then, so what I'm talking about for small businesses is more in the line of at least like 12 to 15 people minimum in the
mhm,
company. There's usually some kind of revenue, right? So that revenue range, so
right.
that you have, there's a reason that you might want to look at your inclusivity practices. And so what I do is then I talk to the kind of the leaders or some of the stakeholders in the company, and that is a conversation I have with them about how many people would that entail, just so that I talk to everyone personally and understand like where they're coming from, where they think maybe the gaps are. I mean, a lot of this is just taking a look at where some of the blind spots might be,
Mm,
so that then we can come together as a group and I facilitate a process where we essentially create like a roadmap for where are they right now and where might they want to go in number of aspects around diversity and inclusion, and come up with a plan for a set amount of time, and then I check in with them throughout the year a couple times just to make sure that they're on track, or see what where they might be struggling, or might need to pivot a little bit on their strategies. And it's all about creating some momentum, and having somewhere to have accountability.
mhm, yeah. Well, I mean, I know that if someone here listening to us wants to know more, they can definitely reach out to you.
Absolutely. And I'll just say too, that I am holding a webinar actually 1 week from
Oh,
today, at 9:15 Pacific time
mhm.
and 12:15 Eastern time, where I'm doing a webinar that will help uncover some of these things and have them think about their own strategies. They can walk away with one thing that they can do within the next 30 days to help them on their road to greater inclusivity in their company.
And where can people sign up for that?
So I'll have to just put my LinkedIn on here, and I do have a link on my profile right
Okay,
at the top, so they can find it there.
okay,
Free masterclass.
absolutely. So where's Paula in 5 years? You know, what is she doing, and what does her business look like?
Oh,
Tough
you're so funny.
question.
It's funny. I think that was kind of a standard interview question, right? When you would try to get a
Yeah.
job and stuff. I remember a boss telling me, he's like, that's just a funny question, because if I look back 5 years ago, there's no way, I don't think, that I would know that this is where I would be 5 years ago, you know? Like, so my past self would not have predicted this future
Mhm.
self that is now my current self. um, so it's hard to say. I mean, I think it's funny. I don't think I'm going to change my heart. Like, I think, we all
Mm,
come with our own set of values that might like change a little bit here and there over the years. I can't see myself changing terribly much in the next 5 years. I've really, I love growing. I love learning new things. So even looking back the past 5 years and what I've decided I wanted to learn has been really fun. I think I want to have a little more fun. I'm going to go back to, pretty soon here. I think I want to go back again to my singing roots.
okay.
So as I build my business, I'm going to, still find ways to have fun.
Yeah. Oh, that is very
How about
important.
you? How about you?
Yeah, I have a very strong business mind, and in that regard, I definitely, in 5 years, I probably want to be at a mark where I make $2 million in revenue. I
Yeah.
want to have created more meaningful jobs and that respect people.
Mm.
I want to have at least half of the income stem from probably online coaching programs that are very scalable, because the traditional marketing agency work that we're doing right now, it's not something I want to give up, but it is a lot more intensive in resources to scale up. On the personal side, I hope that I can create a situation where there's more exploration of our nation, and to some degree also the world. But we'll have to see. I think with my partner in business and life, Andrea, she's way more interested in the world aspect of things, and I'm very
Mm.
like focused on the US. But just taking advantage of these new possibilities of really location independent work.
Yeah.
I definitely want to explore that. Want to find definitely also as much time as possible for my mother, to also spend time with her stateside if possible. Um, yeah, I think that's where I would see and hope to be
Yeah.
in 5 years. Yeah.
Well, it's a few things you mentioned definitely ring for me too, and that is, having a certain percentage of my revenue being in coaching.
Hmm.
And I love this idea of being location independent, and clearly what I'm doing right now is transfer. Like I could do this from anywhere, but the growth and the scalability of it, I think I'm in kind of the same boat, even though we're starting in slightly different places, is
Hmm.
exploring how can I make things work so that I can be location independent, because I would love to go and spend 6 weeks in Prague and work from there, like,
Hmm.
with no problem, for instance. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I personally have found that what is most difficult for myself is I seem to have my routine attached to my environment and my location. And
mm,
probably most everyone has, I would guess. But, I definitely behave differently when I wake up in my bed here in San Antonio versus, for instance, Amsterdam, where I was a few weeks ago.
yeah,
So, and then, getting in work mode and getting into checking emails and all, getting ready for the day, it's just different. But I think that has beauty to it too, right?
it does, and it just takes some discipline and, like, discerning,
Hmm.
when it's okay to not have that routine and give yourself some grace to establish a new routine, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I
Sounds
know
good.
we both have, I believe, other meetings in 10 minutes. Is there any final thought you would like to say here before we can wrap this up? Maybe.
I would just, in the spirit of inclusivity, I would challenge people, if they have not met anyone new recently, to maybe put yourself out there this week. We still have a few days of the week, and to maybe go to a new place, go to somewhere that you've never been before, and strike up a conversation with somebody that may not be anything like you,
Hmm.
and see what happens.
Hmm. I like that. So I
Yeah,
will extend this challenge to your network. Anyone who sees me here on Paula's LinkedIn, please reach out to me. Let's just
yeah.
have a chat about anything and everything. Doesn't have to be business related at all. And
Yeah, if there's
yeah,
anything here that resonated for anyone, please feel free to reach out and say hello and connect.
awesome. Well, thank
Thank
you for your time, Paula. Great conversation, and have a great rest of your day. I know
Yeah,
we'll be in touch and see each
I'll
other
see
in
you
this.
soon.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you
right.
for hosting. Take care.
You too. Thank you. You're very welcome.